Jerchi, Semjin, Tamjin, Bebe, Deva, Damandra, Jerchi, Tam, Chada, Nidan, Rabi, Tanyon, La, Never, Tamjin, Deva, Dam, Devi, Judan, Damar, Jerchi, Semjin, Tamjin, Deva, Dam, Deva, Jiji, Dam, Dawar, Jerchi, Tamjin, Deva, Bebe, Deva, Damandra, Jerchi, Semjin, Tamjin, Niran, Chodan, Nidan, Ran, Tanyon, La, Nevar, Jerchi, Zheng, Beijing, Xishan, Meidou, Zhang, Zheru, Nangxi, Nide, Jianban, De, Sangye, Shangde, Mede, Bewa, Yi, Yogu, Nanda, Shangla, Zhobar, Zhou, Yidang, Guru, Rana, Mandana, Jandar, Yandar,
In English, on page number 11, I take refuge in the Buddha.
I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And now to my enlightenment, I take refuge in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. Enlighten and create these practices. And the same Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings enjoy happiness and causes. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and its causes. May all sentient beings never be separated from joyful bliss. May all sentient beings alive in equanimity, free lives attached to man. His ground mounted with perfume, strong flowers, on unveiled, encircled by the four continents, surmounted by the sun and the moon. I visualize it through the field and over. May all living beings enjoy the pure light. Vedam Guru Rama Mala.
아니, 정말로 쇼핑한 것도 delicious.
Good morning to you all. How is everybody doing this morning?
내가 또 도마텔라 로마 같은 소담니. 다리 돈이 곰대 자인스.
We will start today's practice the class started with the Tara meditation and mantra recitation.
근데 대령 땅이 대실 몽고 저기면 로마 예식도 솔로 지금 아직 돈 다리 됐어야지.
I think I don't need to elaborate on the meditation of the mantra, Tara and Varada, and I would encourage you to just apply the instructions we have discussed before and focus on the mantra of Arya.
Okay, on page number 34.
And so please make sure that your recitation and carried out with smoothly but very relaxedly.
觉得什么光之见上级，给色是我那里中嘛，上草东一到我跟的，刚我将你早背上嘛。尔毛东中做宝囊吉，的学为偶人尔嘛，上苍生我吃你姐姐，报灭上的那不讲嘛。人把宗旨高都是我，若把上等小一年，草的人小白走的，我也那不人家为主。马里帕罗什巴多比，要为世界生的天嘛，脏脏的大罗摩耶给，当上当南夸高。觉得的不少也难的，里瓦没不个不呢嘛，上早家是没老早哇，龙拉那做王学中。用我若浪制造难当，老人所见的你的参照是手当不及，把热真果然的就。一家用更少艰难的，没不这把心的本嘛，上苍的人就把真不得见话那本就。世界上的丑女当子，让我当着马里索嘛，常常公主送终上也，索莫得个那本家。马里少杰可罗江比，让个我杰才能这嘛，常让的高我杰比，我将我杰长我白。下巴让人得到让位，得到知道王的人嘛，上苍上是中为作能，他们这个不是你我你。 조녀 요외 유계홍기 공화담 전나버로마 장산다위도버고진 여보탐즈신드바마 라베도나 오호메니 도벌신드 오른자마 샹사가위 타메메들 버베 장위 회나네 장용 그거네 고르기 러베 혼네 남버조 샹사사즈게 라셔비德智呢长下阶东嘛，朝野长者也给红给人把的不难的干，上苍的嘛也嘛是嘛。我的是说一年嘛，所望大洋大大比，得把全部八年嘛，上草根的果然高比。若为人让得高嘛，也给这为我能过比，高红的罗马年嘛，上苍大人上那大比。红叶那不萨乌尼，日拉曼达拉当不行，觉得是那么有瓦尼嘛，上苍那也作为那比。大真上那那嘛，他让你就把这一给得那么的完了些嘛，上苍他也做那要大大梦。这一代嘛，那个家个我这边做大么那么安巴塞嘛，昨年嘛到我这边，这年不老是。阿拉尼就得大拉维，生的长不人的什么，上苍的是那个比，是为得大洋大大嘛。当如那诺日所能，容不得人让着你。愿我一多把 때랑 아주 다 정말 로마고 뭐 이제 때랑 아주 가정 로마도 속도 때랑 쇼바다가 시험 저기 요래 때라 로미 그동 자동 때라 요 초미 동다 전부 요 된자 아니 아주 로마 다리 돈이 지전 로마고 엄전이 디트지 오절리 다리 소서 그것도 유팅감 탐지 용수로 잡을전이 아니 지진 담바 여름 부치 조지윈 로아 시대 동 판도 진행 좀 그때 담바 아니 지금 따졌던 그 밈 정말 지금 나임다 강을 먹고도 뜨네 선이 정말 내게 동담을 교를 소치 교를 just 교를 소치 something more than 양된도 예스
So next we're going to practice the Tara meditation and Tara meditation through the Tara mantra recitation. And as you can see that we have the Tara puja and another day, and we still have the altars and the separate image of Tara right in front of you, and all the ritual objects and presents. So, and take a close look, and then to this separate and images and separate the objects, and then take them and into your internal meditation. And the meditation, in other words, internalize those separate the images with their blessings, and particularly on the Aryan sacred image. While you are focused on the Aryan Tara sacred image and reciting a sacred mantra, the heart mantra, Om Soha, and so meditate or visualize that from the heart chakra of the Aryan Tara and radiates the light, and then the light spreads out and across the entire universe, and particularly these blessings and reach all those who working tirelessly for the benefits of all sentient beings and the peace of the world, and the well-being of all the everyone else, and may them, for example, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and all the virtuous spiritual friends and masters, may they have a long life, and may their the deeds and the sacred deeds or noble deeds can be successfully accomplished. At the same time, also think that these blessings of the light, or through the blessings of the light that radiates from the heart chakra of Tara, at the same time also reach out and all the infinite sentient beings and across the entire universe, and by touching and by experiencing the moment of the blessing from Aryan Tara, then they themselves individually, whatever the problems and dismays they may experiencing, for example, like the pandemic or the other illness or the sufferings caused by any other reasons or from other sources, whatever that happens, and so deeply take a look and those the miserable conditions, the conditions in which all sentient beings are experiencing, and think of their misery, and then generate a deep compassion for them. Then say the prayers and send your prayers to them. Wish all of them and can endorse with the happiness, possess the causes of happiness.
Page number 74.
罗拉香草罗
长
扎竹马德里花木德达拉耶杰根塞玛德里多那当切德玛罗伊基哲那然德达里德达里德Om Dare De Dare De Re So Om Dare De Dare De Re So Om Dare Dare De Re So Om Dare De 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 Dare De Re So 也是老婆不是说，甚至哪怕是你把你的能力他其实若有能的嘛，当自雄啊不是说我把能得当的话，总的就是看着是不老是吧，让这些当的点儿去。呀，大家整个做的嘛，没听着起来，说个家东这定个定了，什么都，经济真的台湾的，刚是时期，恐怖还是经济些巴达，到经济些给了，让人家这边经济些彼此，让人激动，他的讲理蛮大声，第二，你个没个的，第二人家。参与这边让人注意呢，听得懂什么？刚说到那，刚说到的那，一对没比这个就行。第二呢，听得刚说到的，哈罗的让当一起比刚说，小儿马送了这点子，听我没刚说当，那么一对没比这个没事了，让当一起比听还没刚说到。ते माशवर अंदर केवल चलते ती छेन द कांसा तंग नामी ते में भी चिगिम बिशर तेतर मरोंते तापर चविशर जासिली काते लाते मतेला तेतर नान तापर जर्स शिसो छेंगामी दीवी कांसा की छनिन की ड्रपे रंजन थातेना ते नी तंग देवी मरोंते दग चिपिन देवा मेते तेनी रंजन की थाते बिशर्स ते तेन जोंगी देवा मेते तेनी चिकतंग चिगला पाली galvisheros oda tendici partas kai tama
Now let's continue our work on our textbook. Please go to your copy translation, page 127. I'm sorry, it's 127, yes. Okay. If the self different from the aggregates, now this is a quote actually, the aggregates would then lack of the three characters. Hold on, actually, I'm sorry, this is 124.5. I was right in first place. Okay. Okay. So the consequence of the self being created and destroyed. Again, on page 125, my apologies. The third fallacy, if the self and the aggregates are of one nature, reveals the consequences of the selves being created and destroyed, just as the aggregates, which are asserted to be the same as the person, are created at the birth and destroyed at death. So too, would the person have to be created and destroyed? When what is created and destroyed exists inherently, the person and the aggregates would not be anything other than one of the same or different natures. And yet, both of these would be unacceptable. So, if they were inherently the same, each established by way of its own characteristics, it would be as if the person of this and the previous life were the same without distinction. If that were the case, and you and the continuity of your previous life were the same. The person would have been born in this life without having died, because he would be inseparably one with the person you are in this life. It is unreasonable to make such a statement, because the person would then be permanent. The fundamental treatise called Wisdom says, if that God were born as this man, such a person would be permanent. If a person's like the together, if a person's linked together by former and later lives were of a different nature, existing by way of their own characteristics, it would be impossible for there to be any connections between them. There would be no relationship in terms of the causes and result of actions, because each self, between each self, let me read. There would be no relationship in terms of the cause and the result of action between each self, because they would both be of a different nature. Their arising would be unconnected, because they're both being inherently different, would contradict the dependence of one thing upon other, as the inherent existence of one thing contradicts its being related to something else. It is appropriate to post a relationship between them, because they share neither of the two relations, causes and effect, or being of the same entity. If a person were to exist inherently, they would have not be depend on anything else. But if something has a relationship with anything else, it must also depend upon something else. The supply, the supplement says, whatever exists individually by way of its own characteristics cannot possibly be one to one continuity. If a person were not of the same entity, collections of the past life would be unacceptable. If such were the case, it would contradict many sutras. I guess this much.
Rata zo the chitang pe kalik ho ton do roz na mat ne ton ro tes ka chambor re ta ton do kalik ho ro ko ka ko jiri na tang nge ji chitang ta ha ko ngarang ga yo ko ha ko min ta ha ko ta chu de shi yo chitang ni di do do ka shi wo na ngarang zo nga ji sim na tembo chi da yo ji ro nga se ta kan ro ji ji yong zo ko ji nga se ta phung bo tang chi pa re ji kilin ji yong na 어따 때 문트비 균섬 지당어서 어따다 땡아서 다당아서 로즈 바 균섬 바 모델이 당보 때 봉보 당 식바이나 균지지 근데 봉보 당 식바인지나 아니 봉보 gen직 시비치나 어따 더 직접다니라.
Also, well, as you probably may have already noticed, and the paragraph we just read is focus on a topic that rather is a very challenging and a difficult one, and so which means it is also it becomes a challenge for myself in terms of explain the or elaborate on the actual meaning of the paragraph that well. But even though I would like to try my best and to share my interpretations of this very difficult and challenging topic. Well, in essence, what we have heard or what we needed to know about the most important point in this paragraph raised by the author in this paragraph is that in general, right? In general, we know that we have this clear sense of almost familiar the life experience of I or experience of I, the proclamation, assertions, the claims of I and me is self-identity. So we feel that we have some kind of self-identity, and that is our self, and that is very firm, strong, and solid. That's how we feel. Right? Each time we claim, when we're asserting, when we're conforming or assuming something, and we are naturally take to that very solid, concrete, and strong sense of identity or self-identity or I or person. Well, then in this text, what the author and the text challenges us is that so challenges our understanding of ourselves. See how we determine the relationship between ourself or our identity. In other words, how we establish our identity, right? As a person or self or me or I. So the text wants us to see if you, right, the way you claim yourself, your identity, I say that you and the aggregates, the 5 aggregates or aggregates in general, that's the components of yourself is a one, right? Is inherently actually one, or is one in terms of existing inherently by their own way of characteristics. Then you would have fell into the 3 fallacies or 3 falsehood. So one of the falsehood is that if you claim you as an individual, however, you and your the very components, the building blocks of yourself, that's 5 aggregates, is inherently one, then you will find that yourself actually fell in find yourself in the find yourself in the place where and you contribute to yourself very much. That's all.
대차다 가서 다 나세트 홍보레베즈 홍보등 오치 바랑지 치바로 덴브르 드피 니 홍보등 치바인 소나 균슴 당고 때 강즈나 때나 나세트 간데 저거 나세트 때니 딱바 잠기니 홍보 올라 땅에 때니 딱바 잠기 딱점지 좀 마타 듣고요 말이 오늘 이제 딱점지 마도 자요 말은 아주 좀 마타 버지니 여러분이 정도 홍보들 저방 고츠가 때네 티강라 때 싹싹 가지고 홍보들 자정 조병자 아니 홍보 좋아도 냠띠 요아시만이 정말로 지금 찾고 말 때 그렇지 아니 때 마스 아니 가로 의찬이 마 종아름 기디니 홍보든 지금 돌서도 아니 다 세디 쳇쳇 홍보든 지금 딘도도 매와 창도 그래 매와 창도 뒤 트는 가 매와 창도 그래지 어견 당보도 되지 홍보랑 저는 가던 홍보니 직바이나.
So as we have seen that if you claim, right, the way when you claim yourself as someone who have own some kind of independent, inherently existed self-identity or self, then and you believe that you are actually your very establishment of your self-identity based upon or a result of by recognizing or by asserting that you and your aggregates are identical by nature is one, and so it exists inherently or operating under its own characteristic, and this is if you claim if your sense of identity is characterized by such a assertion or asserted in such a particular way, and then you of course being the opposite of what the actual what the reality is. The reality is that your identity, you as a person, or your selfhood is a designated. Okay. Is it the production of the designation, or is it designated? But in our day-to-day life, in general, that's not how we feel, how we see, how we understand, or how we asserting our selfhood, or self-identity. We are rather doing something is opposite. That is, me, I am, myself is here, and I and my, because I and my very building block, my aggregates are inherently one. Okay, so if that's the case, let's approach what kind of problem. The process of the establishment of your aggregates, for example, like the aggregates of your form, right? That's your physical sort of body, physical and the aspect of your identity, and the form, that body, right? How your materialistic body being formed, being created, right? If you analyze this, right, you know that's at the very moment of the sexual union taking place between you and your parents, or any form of that's kind of a egg or sperm sort of joined together or meet each other and transformed into sort of a joined entity, right? Or becomes something that's in union, and that's the starting moment of the formation of your physical body, isn't it? That of course taking place inside your mother's womb. Okay. So from that moment onwards, we know that following the process of the growing and by feeding, and nurturing all those things, and then your body is keeping growing and growing, and then so all the physical aspect, the parts of your body is growing, right? And and then finally become what we call the human body, and so, but that itself, it's merely, it is a new kind of a production, right? Why? Because that is taking place and within your mom's womb, right? And then it's keeping forming and keeping changing and growing, and then reach its fullness or the mature, right? A maturity. And that itself clearly tells that that is something is newly formed, right? Entity, but it's not. It's dependently and it formed, and it's the production of all kinds of the conditions and the sources, right? And so it is a combination of various things. And so it is not something that's kind of without any change or identical to the form of the physical body, and you as a person received in the previous life. It is not. Right? So now if you claim that you and your body is the same, then the problem is that you're born, right? You never change it. Your the body, which give you the sense of self, right? Self-identity. Your body, your very body gives you or supports you to make a claim that that's you. Actually, never change it, right? It comes from without any changing, come from the previous life, which we know that evidently that's the false, right? That's the fallacy. And then another problem is when you approaching toward the dead end, at the end of your life, right? When the last your breath, right? The breath of the last breath of your inhalation or exhalation is ceased. At that point, your body or your physical body, which you claim is the absolute one, or is by nature is one. With you is stop the functioning, right? So at that point, it means you are also completely terminated. But we know if you say that is the case, and then there's no way for you to claim and so the life after, or in other words, you going to embrace the rebirth.
다 균이와 대가 당나 봉보등 나등 봉보니 식바이소나 봉보라 담아 요바는 나양 담아 찬도 그래서 대비나 ziki 봉보 그런 난고 강바락 바지 담아 요당저 나고 나 강바세 정도 나 담아 찬도 그랬나 균이와 대 느끼와 말을 뜻어 버려.
So the second problem of this claim or the assertion with respect to you and you as an individuality, you and you as a person is identical with your physical body. Is that just like your physical body has many involved with many parts or a greater variety. For example, your head, your arms, your legs, your hands, and the all kind of parts of your body. So there are variants, right? These involve the greater variance or variety. So if you say that's you, that means you are not a single individual. You cannot claim I am a single individual. So you are actually rather instead of say I'm one person or a single entity, you have to admit that you are variety or you are many.
근데 다 선바데 뭐 단도 선바가 돈지 받네. 선바데가 다 아니 랑진기 비치기나 태게만데 다다 있는 태게만 되거든요. 다 뜻도 거르시.
So the third question so we have to deal with is that the problem and neither you say I am body or as so I am as a person is inherently exist by the way of with my physical my aggregates, and then and the relationship between me and my body is inherently existed or by the characteristics by the way of their own character. That's the problem. Or if you say that me and my body the relationship between me and my body is inherently many, not the one, but many. That's also been that claim itself or assertion is not acceptable.
다들 르시 가르나 다 봄보던 치기나 당고 르시 바 봄보던 치바 인소나 개왕 앞시스 킬러는 그러면 nga 개와 시마니 하마니 용 시만 로세든 그 말. 봄봉가 받던 개와도 nga기 봄봉가 같은 안가세 킬렌지고 그 랑진지 바이소나 어때 용거면 되겠지. 아니 르파니와데 nga 타다 인지 킬렌지나 랑진지 드비 nga 봄보니오데 앞시스 갈 개용소 아니 배낭 니 개왕 하마 하 신들라 미 개와 레모나 데니 미 하당 미 니오 지 인세도나 인 딱바도 저진 타데바 누구면 되고 코니기 림디기 텐데 개왕 하메 싹비 제우드 개와 시말라면 바 어떤 랑진지 드비 하당 미 니오 데 랑진지 비 지긴소나 코랑이 찍도 탄로거든 안데 랑진지 드비 타데 인소나 코로나인 대화만 몇 번씩 하고 그는 뜬득하면 되겠어. 되게 저다 딱비 딱좀 기대는 중앙에서 적 듣고 공도 다 노고도 시고 또 송고 살아.
So the essence of again this discussion is that we as individual the true status of our individuality is that it is neither inherently existing inherently the one with our aggregates, nor inherently separate from our aggregates. But rather the true relationship between our individuality or individual identity is dependently arising, or the relation between we as individuality and our aggregates, the very components of our selfhood are interdependently arising. And again, like we talked before, the very philosophical problem, which are actually also against our very day-to-day obvious, the very philosophical problem, which are actually also against our very day-to-day obvious living empirical knowledge or experiences, that if you say me and my body are completely separate entity by its very nature, or absolutely, and by its nature, then, and so there's no relationship between you and your previous life and the next lifetime, right? So whatever you have done in the previous lifetime, you keep the comments accumulated in this lifetime, and it would not affect your next lifetime, just like the previous individual and whoever did anything, and so because it's inherently right a separate entity, so therefore whatever the individual person who done it in the previous lifetime would not affect you here in this lifetime. Why? Because you and your aggregates are absolute a separate entity. Okay? So the links are not there. There's no really a link between. And if you, on the other hand, if you claim that you and your aggregates are absolute one, or by nature is one identical, or inherently existed as one by way it's on their own characteristic, then just like in the previous lifetime, suppose you were born as a God or heavenly being, and that heavenly being, right, after the death, and then become you. In fact, you have to claim that you are still God, the same God who were born, live in the heaven, now here on the planet Earth. If you think that God was you, and then you are God, you're not a person, you never change it. Why? Because the continuity of you, you is never ever change it. So this again will make the you are against your actually the actual experiences or your empirical knowledge. You know that in reality that is not the case, or that's how we see things.
다 랑진기 드바테 잔라 테워 가위시르즈라 데르터나 테터 기치긴 데와 셰트 머롱상 테터라 데와 니 강요 메비시르 지과레 간토 랑기 찬일 소소와 테터 기치 토퍼 리마인 시타트니 자잔디 마레 타말 마 차사 마레 망소나
Yeah.
오문지과 롱드 당데니 자잔디
Awesome. Maybe we just finish today's class by the quotes by the Cantor Petty. He gives a supplement. Okay. As the inherent existence of one thing contributes to its being related to something else, it is inappropriate to possess a relationship between them because they share neither of the two relations causes and the effect of being the same entity. If a person were to exist inherently, they would have not to depend on anything else. But if anything has a relationship with anything else, it must be dependent on something else. The supplement says, whatever exists individually by way of its own characteristics cannot possibly belong to one continuity. Let's just stop here.
어딘서다 저게 까모르 저와틀은 이낭이 달라랭 같은데 하고 문다. 때문에 조금 되게 코스티코트 스테싱이 레시 통통 잡는 건데. 동반이.
So yeah, so this is what I like to offer today. So I would like to open the floor to you and see if you have any questions and related to today's topic. And again, I can't guarantee I will have the answer, clear answer for you. But in any case, if you have questions, and the floor is yours. And if you have no questions, maybe I make a short comments, and then we make the practice meditation. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you for the teaching today and for the Tara meditation. That was lovely. This is the eve of Independence Day in this country. However, in light of recent events, many in this country are grieving and are suffering and angry about rights that have been restricted. What guidance or insight do you have to offer those who are mourning this loss? How can we continue to be the master of our own lives if we have rights that have been restricted or limited?
그래다 kitang 알아서 다 미소소 감동 미와 삼로 땅땅 가가로와 된당 알아서 kitang 야 오늘 진이 전둔 생긴 정말 자라 연습시 원시 gelaki 되나 졸음 통보통나 사 통보통나 다 연기 감동 미와나 치셰트 거로 알아서 단다데 소소랑이 잡동나 홍도 미 잡동나 야 튕게세다 갈이 가오르다 이나다 알은 거 생근나네 지 삼천로지나 Chitang Aranzo, Soso Rangil Shidizo Yutakachi Morzilla. Soso Rangil Sembakipo, Solo Chitawina, and the young Tomal Shidiung, Shidiona Tilatine, Toma, Lamon Shidi Chintawa, Yawarchinam Songo, Tambor and Gish Zuna and Gutilla, Much Tamba Shidis, much Tamba Shidis, Yatamba, Yatamba, Don't Tamba, Chitamba, Tad means among the Shidi kept to Achigores. Tomato, Pashuko Dingle Gangachi. 소수 때라 삼로 땅에 안에 소수 삼로 땅에 때라 리파 배주 땅에 또 세트 가르치고 근데 판토트 분도 터나 때라 맞더니 레가지 존지치면 어지 같이 쓰요는 때라 뭐가 지셔서 같이 쓰면은 저만 뭐가 지셔서 디 리파 배주 땅에 럽트 가지고 그래서 뜻 같이 듣고 매나 다티 콜라 삼로 땅에 소수 기부 매어서나 아주 능을 끼용나 능을 때라 전에 르비 셔당 끼용 거 셔당 끼 떠나 컨트롤을 해서 내 셈나 알아서 요모고 장한다 기록서 리스м 용도 특파마서 소소 인구 시대 정말 나도 대자때 자주진에다 판토와지기는 알아서 공로든가 매위고네 내가 드부터 가지고 그래서 같이 마토와지기나 따때 봐 세비 동용 자진이 때 가지고 그 소소랑이 뛰는라 봐 요라디나 마티와지기 때 당보다 때 마통가 저 시에 정도가 뜻당 알이 선이랑 저고 되던가 정면에 약금도 배달로 얘기하면서 공원에 벤 당들라 판도 첨부 지터하겠다 벤 남은 양체 준비 약부전에 등하로 정말로 미리징은 간리로 등간 특히 약금도 송집지야 동디 뭐뭔 그 시대 등 송집지야 등하로 약부전 받던 만들어 약부전에는 그런 왕들 강사식과 왕질지니 고가르치는 차다더라도 했는데 뭐 모두가 아무 메모에 메모를 랑간 요런가 요하는 송집 링긴도 톱냥 되지니 로토에 때 같이 모르는 게 삼교지.
Well, yes, your question is very relevant, and I fully understand where you come from, and I definitely share your concerns in your aspiration. And so what can I offer and to you or share with you is that I guess first thing is that we have to know that our own position, our own experience, right? And not just feel, deal with our feelings and know how we feel about it, this or that, but rather we know the sort of where we come from with that to feelings. Right? Here, the problem is that when we feel uneasy, okay, we feel restless, we feel very disappointing or hard. I guess so the right thing to do is that we have to clearly see the relationship between us, right? How we feel and the reality or the world or the situation from where we find ourselves being very challenged and disappointed or unhappy. So we must see how we get it here, right? To offer you a clear instruction or something that's very helpful and practical, I guess may or may not my ideas may or may not that useful, because generally speaking, to give someone who need a clear answer the instruction solutions, right, and to deal with situations like you described, you have to have the knowledge, the power to see the person's mental position and personality and unique the individual growing experiences and its unique sort of the interests, temperament, and so on and so forth. So then you can give it the appropriate and correct and practical advice. So that of course ideally requires the individual who has the clairvoyance or who has the power of foreseeing. But unfortunately, I don't have that supernatural power. So therefore, my advice is just something in general and based upon my understandings, my knowledges. So my knowledge and my understanding again in terms of how to solve the problem, I guess to refer to what His Holiness the Dalai Lama often advised, is that when we find ourselves in the position where we feel restless, feels hard, feels unhappy, and very disappointing, like His Holiness Dalai Lama said, we must first of all, instead of try to pacify or dispel or remove those ugly scenarios or situations, right, and which bothers us externally, or make a peace with them, we rather should, the first step we should take is make a peace ourselves. Right? We must reach the self-peace, the peace for ourselves internally, make ourselves a very peaceful person. If we make ourselves a peaceful person, again, like His Holiness Dalai Lama say, and we are one person for sure that is peaceful, then we can go and approach the second person, by influence the person who we can communicate well. So then we can make it a second peaceful person, and second person make it the other. So this way, individually, and if I make a 10 peaceful individual, those 10 peaceful individual make 100 peaceful individual, and 100 make 1,000, 1,000 make 100,000, and it's multiply. So then, of course, we will transforming and turn the communities, the society, the world in which we live will be a peaceful place. Right? So that's the kind of very practical, direct solution. And then having said that, so then how you make yourself as a peaceful person at the first, right, as a starting point of this peacemaking process, is that first of all, you must apply your human intelligence. Right? Meaning you have to analyze this, you have to thinking, so what is the actuality? What is the cause, right? What's truly going on out there? And so is there anything I can do about it to fix it or provide some kind of solution immediately, or do something to affect the reality in long run? Right? You have to apply the intelligence, right, and the analysis, and depend upon the apply the reasoning. So while you are analyzing your reasoning and or try to understand the situation and how you can do what you can do, right? How you do it, I guess we can use or take what Chanchadeva said in the Bodhisattva's life, and he advised that if there is a way to resolve the problem and why you are not happy, why you are angry. Right? If there is a way you can solve the problem, why you are angry. Right? If there is no way you can fix the problem, what's the use of to be angry, of being angry? I guess we can definitely take a very practical, available teachings from this remarkable quotes, because you see the situation is if the situation is way too big, right, and is out of your individual's immediate sort of power of power in terms of the fix or solve the problem immediately, then you should not be that much concerned about or take it too personally. Why? Because your individual capacity is just there. You have to see that there is a limitation, at least in that particular moment, right? So then, if you see that there are things you can do, right? You can affect, influence the others, and then of course you can approach and do it accordingly. But in any case, here is the bottom line. In any case, your approach, right? Your the involvement or your participation of to resolve the problems out there must guarantee that you are not become victim or become someone who suffers a lot. Okay? So not being suffered, not being become very painful, a miserable person. That is the key. That is the bottom line, right? So here is the thing, because if you find yourself is constantly very angry and unhappy and painful, feel miserable, then that sense of miserable, a sense of pain will make you potentially become angry, right? And so when you become angry and you will be hateful, and then that very hateful and angry, of course, will destroy your inner peace, right? And then affect you at the physical body level too. So see now, if you're trapped in the anger, right, in the name of to solve the problem, help others, you find yourself is very unhappy and painful, then you have no peace to do anything for yourself. And then, of course, if you cannot do and make peace, then you have no peace inside yourself. How come you can give the peace or make others peaceful or community peaceful, right? It seems that there's no way you can do it, right? So therefore, talk about the peace, and we have to start with make it first of all ourselves as a very peaceful person. Okay. Then we will be in the position to make others or transforming our state of peace and to others, and that's how we can influence and affect our community, our country. So speak of our country, this great country of the United States of America, and tomorrow we are going to celebrate the birth of this nation, and this country being born about more than 200 years ago. And so far, from positive perspective, when you look at this country from positive perspective point of view, this country have done a tremendous contribution in terms of improve the human conditions and the world's and contribute to the world and the life qualities of scientific understandings and so on and so forth, and all the politically offer the ideas of the democracy and the human rights and so forth and so on and so forth. It has done a tremendous thing. So we, as an individuality, as an individual citizens of this country, and I guess we have to know that how fortunate we are, right? And while we are celebrated this great birth of the great nation, we must make ourselves has this peace, has this correct and clear recognition, appreciation of this country. Why? Because this country not unlike other country owned by a few individual or one individual. There's many countries out there in the world who is under dictatorship. Right, the country is belong to one person or and a few individuals who support it, and that one single individual. But in this country, we are doing something opposite. We as people, we manage this country, and we decided that we have the power and we have the ability and to determine our country's future. So therefore, my understanding is that while we take all kinds of advantages, privileges, right, and rights, we also have to know that we have the basic obligations and responsibilities and to this country. So again, to do everything and to make it our country or others happy or our community happy or the world happy, the starting point is to make ourselves a peaceful person.
Okay. 한동안 더 줄래?
Thank you, Geshe-la, Tempa, and Tenzin. Announcement on July 6th will be His Holiness's 87th birthday, and the monks will have a smoke puja, and they will bless prayer flags, and then they will say long life prayers for His Holiness and present katas, and then there will be Tibetan dressy, sweet rice, and tea. So if you'd like to join us, it's at 10 a.m. on Wednesday. For those who would like to make a donation to the center, it would be greatly appreciated, and it would be for the monastery, and also you're donating to our translator, Tenzin. And you can do this by calling 812-336-6807 or by emailing the center at tmbcc.kcl@gmail.com. Those of you here in the center, I will pass around the begging bowl, and if you can give a donation, it would be greatly appreciated. Thank
Morning. Stacy,
you. Yes.
would you maybe Geshe-la or one of you can also share your donation how I've been given to and being used?
Oh, yeah. I believe that our donation that we collected recently, Tenzin took to help with the war effort. And where is it, the war effort?
Ukraine.
Yeah, sorry, my mind went blank. Ukraine. But Tenzin, I believe, was in Poland. Is that correct, Tenzin? And it went for food.
I was in Poland and I went to Kyiv, Ukraine.
Oh, okay. All right. So yes. So thanks to everyone who donated for that. Thank you, Holly. I had a mind like freeze there. All right. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Geshe-la said I make a short explanation. Okay, so I received a $1,000 and a generous donation and from through Geshe-la and Tempa, Venerable Tempa, and so while I was in Kyiv and I visited several different areas, including the city itself, but outside the city. So where I saw the sufferings, not just human, but also the animals. And for example, the $500 which I gave donated to, it was an animal shelter. And when I went to that area, and they collected the animals and dogs mainly, and I was abandoned by the owners, and maybe some of them killed, most of them I believe run away, abandoned the pets. So and then other volunteers who collected like 568 dogs something. So I went there and saw the animal, and it just feels very difficult. So then I made mind. I said, how about I use the $500 from TMBCC, give to the shelter. So then I made a decision and gave to the shelter. And I believe I sent the receipts and to use Stacy and a copy to Geshe-la as well. And another $500 is I give it again, collected from you, and I give to the local the Dharma center in the Kyiv. I met several the Ukrainians who practice Buddhism. So, and because of the war and the center is closed, and they have several centers. One of the center I met the couple center member, and the center is closed. Most people they don't know that they run away or they want to maybe the far other country or the far west, just seeking for refugees. So anyway, and it's 2-3 sanghas remain, and they will try to do everything and helping others. And I find very moving and touched. So at that point, I decided to give the remaining $500 to the sangha. I told them this is from TMBCC, and please use it. When we see anyone who really desperately need it. So that's how I made it. I mean, use the donation.
네, 어떻게 치시죠? 아주 장명원이 아주 장명원이 그지 치시기 요 결혼 아주 잡지 예쁘게 송았대요. 야,
So usually I said that thank you for taking make such a trip on behalf of unlimited donations to those people and on behalf of TMDCC or the members of our sangha here.
아니 그 어떻게 치서 그줄.
Thank you.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Okay, page number 80.
这汤包着老几就此人这老宗保的一切，特人南极道德周西上。赵西阳左兄跟着就拉玛人不是老说年个把面当真了，个只能前辈国内集中的歌颂特别你这咋的说。若三周人不知马街把那节日给我娘把没本样，公的公的陪我说，刚热热为国为上看的，看当的娃马林中为你。我等着养作业，设备身体保的单点儿去，家不把我这点钱包当，跟着让步的样的人的，得到跟节就是道路上，给我的到他们知道的我。别叫我他们自己，我刚刚说的我把的，大人以为早晚的跟上，让不出是热的我儿子，俺的中的担保的上级，但是节目他们这跟不上。立志呢，跟老的这人中为你上街担保道德节节去，才得我跟的家我从靠背，当初新人也是这边的，也为我被拉上的年里，可就这样落不好地儿去。Okay, everybody. Happy Independence Day, okay?